made this strategy. We need to do that because everybody else is going to do the same thing. So, golf is great in the sense that you get to teach a lot of different life skills about a lot of different things. But that's one that you get to be like, yeah, well, sometimes it's win and run, even though this is, technically not right. You shouldn't be playing it this way. Come on. He's like, well, why should we just have to hit over there? Absolutely, you should. If I was running a tournament, you hit, I don't care if you hit 3 balls.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you, because every one of them has a max hit. So once you get 10, you pick.
Okay.
So, what's the only harm is that you have somebody sit there and
About what?
it's more of it's more of
Yeah, I sent comments back on that one.
I don't feel bad about joking much about
Yeah, the statute. I cited the statute in there.
It's 7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. I'll call the Gardner City Council meeting to order. Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a point of order, I just wanted to get something out of the way before we started this evening. There has been a request on the part of Councilwoman Roberts to have a slight change of the seating accommodations regarding masks. So, Tori, would you be willing to sit here for this evening while
Yes.
in the open seat here next to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And you want to bring your laptop with you?
Oh, yeah.
I believe there's an open spot here for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
That's no problem, no problem. Do you have your name tag too? Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
You want to be right back?
Well,
All right, great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
This has been done to accommodate the councilwoman's, request concerning, just safety on the dais. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to start off with a couple of proclamations, and then there's a presentation on the Waverly Road project to Madison Avenue. So, let's start with a proclamation. This is for Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of the communities throughout this country, including Gardner, Kansas, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region, and whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens, and whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction, and whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community and Gardner, recognizes benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, and whereas parks and recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and national recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, now therefore be it resolved that I, Steve Shute, Mayor of City Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim July as the Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Gardner, Kansas. And then there's a portion here on the seal here to encourage the citizens of Gardner to recognize the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. And as soon as I get done signing this, I'm going to go over here and present it to our Parks and Recreation Director, Jason Bruce, who does yeoman's work, especially in this era of the new normal with regard to COVID. And thank you very much for you and your staff. And I know you've got a lot going on and you're having to deal with a lot of different things. So thank you again for all of your work and all of the work of your staff and keeping us healthy and prosperous and giving us things to do in our community. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, the next one is a presentation on the Waverly Road project. Tim McEldowney is sitting in the hot seat tonight. Tim, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
And you'll want to speak up a little bit because the muffles, the mask kind of muffles the sound.
So yeah, we're here to give an update on the Waverly Road project and also bring to your attention a couple items that we need to maybe a little direction from on council on how to proceed here. So just a little background, you all are familiar with the project. North would be on the right on this map. So the area in blue is the original project as scoped. Went from Waverly north to Madison. Did not include the intersection at Waverly and Santa Fe. That's in the current project. But does include reconstruction of the intersection at Madison. So as we got into the project, actually as we've gotten into the Santa Fe project, we realized that the area south of Waverly is deteriorating pretty rapidly. And we've had crews out patching quite often and, just trying to keep the pavement together there. So one thing we'd like to kind of throw out here is as an alternative is to include some structural improvements with that section of road and include it with this project. And alternatively, at the north end, we want to look at some additional work there, which would be widening the road from Madison up to, I have my glasses on, to Fountain Street. And the main purpose that we looked at doing that is to really provide better access for the school and extend that 3-lane section up at least past their entrance, and then Fountain would kind of be the logical place to end that at. So we'll circle back to this, but those are a couple things we want to consider, but really the main thing we want to talk about tonight is the intersection at Madison, and Affinis is our consultant, and Kristen Leathers-Grattan is here, and she's going to come up and go into more of the details of their analysis of that intersection.
Tim, is this?
Yeah.
Just which one? This one?
The right one.
The right one? Okay, awesome. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for letting me be here to give you an update on this. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, as Tim alluded to, we are working on the base project right now, the blue, and have been working at the north end there at the intersection of Madison. As y'all know, there is congestion during the school year in the morning peak hour, as well as at drop-off time in that 3 to 4 o'clock range in the afternoon. So we did some traffic counts out there to perform a traffic study to kind of look and see what kind of improvements were there. The obvious question is, can a signal be installed to alleviate that congestion? So we went through the steps to determine if that was a warranted improvement there. Kind of step through. So to determine if a signal is warranted at an intersection, there are certain criteria and steps that you have to go through. Part of that is doing a traffic analysis with the existing counts at the peak hours and different things like that. So 4 of the warrants that are available of the 8, we verified through the intersection, and the warrants were not met. The traffic volumes were not there consistently enough while they're there in the peak hour in the morning, and in the afternoon it's really for like a 15-minute period, so it's not a sustained peak or congestion, although when you're in it, I'm sure it seems like it's very sustained. So we went through those and determined that it wasn't warranted. So the next steps we looked at were what other improvements could we make to the intersection. Obviously, we're already widening the street to a 3-lane section to allow a dedicated left turn lane north and south at that intersection, which will alleviate some of the backup for the through traffic. But are there other improvements we could do? Right now, the existing condition is Madison is a stop condition and Waverly is the through movement. So one easy way to share this and explain how the intersection operates is to rate the intersection on a level of service and classify it in that direction. So as you can see, we've got kind of the chart here. A level of service A means it's awesome. You can just go through, there's no delay, about 10-second delay, which is, manageable, all the way down to an F. So it's much to like a grade criteria for a school or a class. So the F is obviously a delay of 50 seconds, which is what's delineated here. So in that range, F means it's a failed intersection, basically. So we did that analysis and applied it to not only what's existing today with the counts, but also what would be in the future in 2040. So kind of step through this. This is going to be, we're going to go through 5 different scenarios just to set it up. The first one here is the existing configuration. North is up. Waverly is the up and down street. Madison is the left to right street. And the school is up in that upper right corner of each picture. So today, the 2020, the level of service of the intersection, as you can see, Waverly functions at a level A, which means it's running smooth, which you would expect since it is a through street and no stop condition. But you can see that the east-west legs both, especially in the left turn movement on the east leg, that your level of service is an E and a D, which means you're at the bottom end of the ratings. You have a longer delay to access and get out onto Waverly. So we also know that I believe the name of the subdivision is Breckenwood is getting ready to develop another phase off to the west that will access Madison. So we added those counts from that traffic study just to see how that would impact the intersection in today's time frame. And that is the picture to the right. And you can see that actually the level of service actually for the eastbound left turn lane from the elementary school fails even worse. You get an F and an E on those. So that leg fails, or the delay is even greater on that leg with the new development. So that was just kind of a today moment with that. So with the growth, you can see that how it impacts the intersection. This next one is showing the proposed improvements there at Waverly with a 3-lane section north-south, and then the east-west movement there along Madison. We went ahead and showed a 3-lane section there. There is enough pavement and currently to stripe it for a left turn lane, a dedicated left turn lane. And I believe on the east leg it's already striped that way in that manner anyway. So for today, 2020, you can see the level of service. Waverly is running gets an A, which is expected since it does not have a stop condition on it. And again, the level of service on the east and west legs is at an E and D for the left turn lanes and an F and an E for the left turn lane. So again, you have a long delay for those, and those are pretty significant movements. On the year 2040, you can see further that the left turn lane on the east and west left turn lanes is an F altogether. So there's no improvement there with the existing condition, even with the left turn lanes being added. Again, just to kind of give you an order of magnitude with keeping the configuration the same with Madison being a stop condition. So the next step we looked at was an obvious solution would be a 4-way stop. Since a signal is not warranted, a 4-way stop maybe would help the level of service. And again, to the left, you'll see the 2020 level of service. We have, you'll notice that the Waverly section went down to the through movements being just a level of service B. There's a little bit more of a delay, not crazy, but it's manageable. But every car will have to stop because it's a 4-way stop. On your east and west legs, you'll notice that the level of service improved pretty tremendously. It went from an E and an F up to a B and an A, which is pretty substantial. And a lot of that is because now they have a delay or a gap that they can turn out into, and they don't have to wait for the through traffic to stop or to get a gap in the through traffic. And it just makes a more balanced intersection. Moving to the right, you'll see that in the year 2040, that the level of service on Waverly deteriorates to a level of service C. Again, not a crazy delay, but you're still having more of a delay, and that's your primary through movement. think the big takeaway on this is while we've improved made it more equitable across the intersection on all legs with a reasonable delay. The thing to note on this is that this is really looking at the peak hour, whereas on Waverly, you're going to be looking at another 22 hours of the day where you've got the through movement that's the primary concern, and you're going to have people needing to stop no matter what, and even if nobody's on that east and west leg. So there's going to be potentially some issues with that. Driver impatience, if you will, people rolling through the stop sign, things like that, which are classic for a four-way stop as far as a safety concern. So another solution that we looked at was a roundabout, and I think Tim and Michael had brought this to move forward with that and had let you know that this was something we were going to be looking at for this intersection. It's a viable option that improves not only driver safety but pedestrian safety, and allows you to minimize congestion through the intersection in peak hours. So on to the left is the 2020 this with current volumes, and you can see it's performing at a level of service A on all four legs. So you have no delay. You're basically just going through the intersection very easily. At year 2040, you can see the level of service is still at an A on most every leg except for the south leg. And in the AM, you'll notice that it moves to a level of service B, which is just a slight more of a delay. And a lot of it is because from the north, when those people get into the roundabout, they're turning left to go to the elementary school or to the high school campus. So there's more traffic coming through the circle on that south side of the roundabout, so they have to kind of maybe wait a little bit longer to get in the queue to make that right turn or to go through. But all in all, still performing very well, more equitable across all four legs, and allows people to get in and out very easily through there. So from the standpoint of our findings, and if everything, if budget is approved, the roundabout we feel like is the best option for this. If congestion is a true concern, and minimizing that for now and in the future 20 years. The benefit of a roundabout is it has fewer conflict points. You've got good visibility across the circle. People can get in, see they're only looking in one direction as opposed to worrying about cross traffic. Significantly reduces the chance of an injury accident, which from a vehicular and a pedestrian standpoint, so it makes the intersection much safer. Also promotes slower speeds. When we ran our analysis through this with the deflections through the curves and around the roundabout, your average speed is around 20 miles per hour on all four legs, which is, and you're in a school zone, it's posted 25. The roadway normally is posted 40 miles an hour. So through that intersection, you're really going to be slowing people down to make it much safer. It also keeps traffic moving. There's no hard stops or anything. You just yield and glide right on into the roundabout. You'll also notice that in the red hatched areas are what we would consider like paved or raised areas that are refuge, and on the legs of the intersection, those hatched areas with the red are the refuge islands. Basically what pedestrians can do is cross from one side to the refuge and then cross the other leg of that intersection. So there's a safety feature there that they're only looking one direction and not having to watch traffic both directions before they get to the refuge. Then also on the center island, we have a paved apron there that allows, if a big truck, an 18-wheeler is coming through, which is not expected very often, but they can encroach on that apron and pass through the roundabout easily without damaging anything. Buses and emergency vehicles, we set the size of the roundabout so that they could easily move through the roundabout without encroaching on that apron, because we know that can sometimes cause damage to tires and things like that. So that's another benefit of this, is it allows for that movement through the roundabout. Just from a familiarity standpoint, and those roundabouts while we've got them throughout the metro area, and you have one here in Gardner at Grand and White. It's over there by the Moonlight Elementary School and Trail Ridge Middle School. That's functioning. It's in place now, so it's not something that's new to the community. But there's other places where we've seen great success with roundabouts adjacent to schools. And we just have 4 examples shown here. One's in Lenexa and Olathe, and then a couple in Overland Park. But it really helps with those peak hour congestions. So when a signal is not warranted, it allows you to have something that keeps the intersection safe and allows traffic to flow through easily. So cost comparison, Tim kind of alluded to this at the beginning with the base project, or the budget for the project, which is the base project, is $3 million. Early on in this process, we did some evaluation on the existing pavement with our geotechnical, doing some cores and things like that, and we're able to determine that we could do a widening as opposed to a full pavement replacement on the base project. Also, when Tim and Michael came to you and we talked about the open ditch section instead of curb and gutter, there was some significant savings in both of those things that had given us the flexibility to have some room in the budget. The base project cost for Waverly Road is right around that $2.2 million mark. Those are numbers we just ran with current bid prices and are fairly conservative on that. So feel like there's a contingency, 15% contingency in that as well, to give us a little bit of buffer for any price increases that may incur for 2021. For the roundabout, we just gave what the additional cost would be on that, which is around $514,000. Again, a lot of that comes because we will have curb and gutter around that. You'll have that big center island with more pavement around it, the raised medians and so forth through there. So there's some substantial costs there with that. The other pieces that Tim talked about were alternate 1, the south piece between 56 and 175th Street, where that pavement has failed. We put together a cost estimate on that where it would be a full replacement of that 2-lane pavement and then transitioning into the improvements there at Santa Fe, and came with a budget of around $870,000. I will say we assumed that the subgrade would need some work on that and some things like that. If all that is in good shape, there may be some less cost on that, but we always try to make sure we've accounted for that, given some of our soils around here. The alternate 2, the north piece, which Tim talked about, was from Madison Street to Fountain. To widen that, similar to how we're doing on the base project, would be $220,000 roughly. So just to kind of give you an order of magnitude with all 4 of with the 3 add-ons and the base project, where the budget or the proposed opinion of probable cost is right around $3.8 million.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And with that, I'll open it up for questions. I realize we've thrown a lot of information at you, and
Yes.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start to my right with Councilman Baldwin. Do you have any questions for the consultant or for Tim?
So if the south addition, the reconstruction, if it's gonna need a complete reconstruction, how much are we saving by doing it now versus letting that sit there for another 2 or 3 years and get worse, and then do a complete reconstruction then?
Well, obviously, we just beat your inflationary costs. I think there's also, if you do it as part of this project, there's some economy of scale that you get by having the contractor mobilized once to come out there to do the work. He'll have all the equipment on site. The project could be easily phased, where that section could be done, to phase the construction, because we do know the school's schedule will be impacted with the construction along Waverly. That we'll try to focus on that during the summer months when traffic is less there at the school campus. So that would be some work they could do earlier in the spring, maybe when school is still in session, because there would be a good route with 175th being complete.
Okay. Thank you.
From a budgetary perspective, we're talking about $800,000 that's not currently budgeted.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim, can you or Matt, can you speak on the budgetary impact of adding that cost?
We're gonna have to model it out in our special highway fund. Basically, we've had a lot of projects that we have scheduled out in the 5-year CIP, and we kind of already plan to use most of fund balance, just paying debt service over time. I'll have to work with the Public Works Director to try and find out what's the priorities and what can we recommend to council.
Okay. Tim, you wanna add anything?
Well, I would just say, you know, there are some other options of, you know, maybe intermediate improvements that obviously wouldn't be as good, but would maybe buy us some time. Just for you, but there's not much asphalt out there now. I think there's probably only about 4 inches thick, so.
Well, it was a farm road, it wasn't expected to have that kind of traffic it's got on it
Right.
right now.
Right. So I think there's some opportunities to maybe save some money, you know, if we choose that maybe the other things are more important, that, okay, we could do some things that will help us get by. You know, that maybe gets back to your question a little bit, Councilman Baldwin.
Basically, if you take out the south piece, we're at budget.
Right,
And that still gets you the roundabout, which from a traffic perspective is advantageous. So to me, since it's a reconstruction anyway, and you'll have 175th completely overhauled and Waverly with this project, I would delay the south piece and we can reconstruct it in a few years or as money changes,
Or as development comes in.
as development changes.
you know, one thing we do a lot on projects like this, and this is pretty easy to do on this one, is we can set chunks aside as alternates on the bid. So for example, you would have the base bid with the main project, have a second piece for just the south leg, another piece for just the north, and then when you actually get your bids, you can kind of see where you're at, and you know, that would certainly, you know, influence your decision on, well, hey, you know, maybe we can afford to do it, or maybe we can't at that time.
Yeah,
Similar to how we did the Justice Center, there
Yeah.
were some things that we
Yeah,
were
nothing
able to
wrong with
add
getting the bid.
later in the project to incorporate those.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Gogorsek?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation. My concern, since we've already talked about budget, which I agree with, but my concern is the intersection at Waverly and Old 56. I've been out there at the request of some citizens as school was being let out, and maybe I just got a bad or a short straw, but the amount of 18-wheeler traffic going east or westbound on Old 56, I'll be 48 in July, but if I were a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old young driver, with the angle of Old 56, it's just, whew.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd have the confidence to do what I needed to do to get into traffic and boogie on down the road. So that's my concern, is Old 56. I do agree with the budget. I understand priority-based spending, but that's my concern. I think the roundabout fixes the immediate issue. I'm for roundabouts. It allows traffic to flow, everything you pointed out, but Old 56 and Waverly is, I mean, knock on wood, we haven't had any major accidents out there, but that's where I'd like to see the next priority be, is that intersection.
Well, Tim can maybe answer that. I think that there is definitely some room for discussion on that for a future project, and this is not part of that discussion, I don't think, but I completely understand where you're coming from, Randy. So, Tim, you wanna?
Well, we certainly have concerns with that intersection as well. And we've done some preliminary work with KDOT to look at, you know, what it would look like to make improvements there. KDOT initially was in favor of realigning Waverly Road to basically hit 56 at a right angle, which certainly that's optimum. You'd like to have your intersections do that, but we had our consultant look at keeping the existing alignment and just making safety improvements to make all those turning moving safer and with signals down the road, whatever. But obviously the price, it gets pretty pricey when you do all that.
Yeah, I think these conversations were had maybe 3 or 4 years ago about realignment and so forth. So I'd love for us to, you know, keep that on an active list somewhere and be able to maybe rediscuss that as our priorities are, our revenues are able to meet our priorities. So thank you.
No, thank you. Anything else, Councilman? Councilwoman Roberts?
I didn't really have a question, but I do like the roundabout possibility. And I do like how we can get bids for, and if we get lower bids, maybe we can add on things as we go. I like that approach. I didn't really have any questions, just.
Okay, great, thank you, thank you. Council President?
Same. I like the roundabout idea, and I think it's the right place for it, particularly with the schools there. So I'm all for that.
My only question really was around, I asked the budgetary question, which I think was very adequately resolved. The other piece was, how much consultation did we have with the fire district and the school district regarding this alignment? Have they been consulted on this? Do they have good feelings about this? I know that there have been some concerns addressed by the fire, expressed by the fire district in the past about roundabouts and being able to get the large emergency vehicles through that. Have they been assuaged? Are they feeling comfortable with this approach?
I have not reached out to, specifically on this project to either one yet, and certainly if we talk about the roundabout going forward, that we would want to reach out to the school district and talk with them about it. You know, generally speaking, I mean, it's kind of just a geometry problem with, as far as the fire trucks go, and that's just something we, work through the details with them if they have concerns about the size of it, the radius.
Yeah, I think that was the concern addressed by, or expressed by the fire chiefs in the past about being able to get their large ladder vehicles, the Brontos and then the very large 100-foot ladders through those. I know that they've expressed concerns about the very roundabout that you discussed right now, the one at White and Grand, about getting their vehicles through there. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping them in the loop on this.
Well, one of the nice things Kristen alluded to it is having that apron on the inside, so that allows you to keep the size of the roundabout to a minimum, but when a large vehicle does come through, it's fine, let the back wheels track over that inner apron, and again, that keeps the size of the roundabout
And it's not going to
manageable.
be torn up or anything when that happens. That's the other thing too. I've seen a lot of those get really badly torn up by large vehicles.
They can be, and they can be a maintenance issue, but again, you're hopefully you're talking a rare occurrence when they're going through there, and
Okay, great.
yeah.
Any other questions from the council? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. Thanks. Yes. Council President?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
You wanna go to
All
the
right,
next
super.
section?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Yes. Were you looking for some consensus on moving forward, Tim, on this?
Well, yes, I mean, what I was hearing obviously was that the roundabouts a go, and then basically we'll put the other two items as alternates on there and evaluate when the bids come in and come back to you and determine what we're actually gonna build. Is that correct?
And please keep us informed either through Jim, through the Friday night memo, or other activities, how those discussions go with the school district and the fire district on that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, moving on, we have a public comment time. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. Again, the ground rules are pretty simple. We have a 5-minute time clock over here on the left, my right, your left. Also, no profanity, no personal attacks. With that being said, anybody who wishes to come forward can do so now. Please come forward when you do and speak your name and address into the microphone for the record. With that being said, the mic is open. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the, yes?
You do have that public comment to read into the record.
Oh, I do have public, oh, I'm so sorry about that. I did not see that. Thank you. I do have a public comment to read in the record. My apologies. This is from Jeremy Thurston, 653 East Apache. I would suggest to council that providing a citywide cleanup service at an estimated cost of $55,000 is neither a prudent use of tax dollars in this current environment, nor does it seem to fit under what limited services government should provide based on the philosophies of at least a few members of the governing body. If you're serious about keeping spending under control, this would seem to be an easy and obvious, albeit potentially unpopular item to remove from our expenses. Thank you for your time. So, thank you, Sharon. I don't believe I didn't see that. Thanks again. Moving on to consent agenda. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 5.
Number 5. All right. Oh, go figure. That's what the comment was about. Anybody else?
And Mayor, are you just referring to consent or planning and zoning consent?
No, this is just consent. We consider both separately. So yes. So I will entertain a motion on consent agenda items 1 through 4.
So moved.
Second?
Motion, Winters, second, Baldwin, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? Consent agenda items 1 through 4 pass. Consent agenda item number 5, consider authorizing the execution of a contract with Gardner Disposal for the 2020 citywide cleanup. Councilman Gorsick, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And looking at the math, understanding the projections versus the budgeted amount, also understanding, I don't know that regulation is the right word, but it's going to be hard to monitor on the fly. These dump trucks don't have a scaling system built into where when it hits 200 tons that they stop collecting refuse. And then I think the gentleman that you read into record said it better than I can. I just don't think that we need to spend north of $55,000. I think we need to bring this to a work session, get the community's involvement, and understand what some of the workarounds are. I think 10, 15 years ago it was a good thing when they started this. But I don't see this as a good use of taxpayer money. I really don't.
Okay, so question for City Administrator, and I think you had been asked this question a couple of times offline, notwithstanding the public comment. Have you done some research and analysis? I know that we had talked about this about a month ago about maybe getting some numbers on this and what the total overall cost is and what our overruns have been on a year-to-year basis on the cleanup. Could you?
Well, as far as overruns, I mean, we didn't have limitations before. So the tonnage collected that's indicated on the chart that Michael provided is accurate. The price per ton is the major concern. We only have one bidder for this service. The price has gone up significantly. I mean, this was a $10,000 program 5 years ago, and we're upwards of $55,000, $60,000, $75,000. And really, when you think about the task that the people that are picking up the garbage, what their primary task is, they're not going to, spend time going through people's whatever they put out. I mean, that's going to be an arduous task. Their job is to get through as much of the community as they can as quickly as possible. I think our attempts to, minimize the tonnage and get under 77,000, which is what the projection was, is going to be difficult.
I kind of expected the same thing. Especially since a lot of people are doing home improvement projects right now, and that's going to add a lot more potential refuse to the pile.
However, though,
Yes.
some of those are not allowed, correct? I mean,
Well, again, how do you police that?
you don't police it, but I'm saying, like, if they know they're not going to be picking up, construction material, that's pretty easy to not pick up. I mean, if they're obviously not going to be monitoring how much they're picking up as they go, but I think you see construction material, you don't pick it up, you leave it there.
Well, if it's separated, yeah, but if it's not separated, I mean, you could take
Thrown in a box.
yeah, you could, it's really easy to commingle those items.
Yeah. If we were to eliminate this, not approve this, what potential options can we afford our citizens with regard to that kind of disposal? Is there anything that
I think that we can point them to where that they can do that on their own. I think Jennifer brought up a great point about, she had something needed to be picked up as $15 and they came and got it. And I know there's other options through waste management, just list those sites that they can make that request on their own.
Yeah, there's a 1-800 You Got Trash.
Yep.
That's a private free market service. Waste Management has, and I spoke of this before, a large, I think it's 4 foot by 8 foot by 2 or 3 foot deep canvas bag that you can fill it up with, and they kind of weigh it on site and charge you. Gardner Disposal, to Jim and Jennifer's point, they have the service, so I think there's alternatives here versus supplement it through a tax-funded cost.
I know that in years past, we did stop this for a few years. I wanna say, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2010 or 11.
Yeah, because of the last downturn, I remember that.
So, and then, I mean, but I don't know, I feel like there's other options, or maybe we do need a work session. Maybe it's not an every year thing, maybe it's an every other year thing, or maybe there's limitations, or, I don't know. More bids or something.
Well, I'm in favor of looking at the possibilities of spending it this year pending further study and seeing where we might come down sometime in the future.
I mean, further study for what? I mean, I don't know why we need a work session.
Maybe not a work session,
No,
but
just seeing whether or not there might be some, like, for example, in 2021.
like I would say no for this year, but maybe other years there's a possibility, is where I was kind of leaving it open with. Is it a work session? I don't know. Are there other alternatives? Maybe.
As far as more information, when I asked city administrator for a lot of this information, and Michael sent out that chart, what I was really getting at was, and we don't know the answer to this, of the people that use it, how much are the taxpayers essentially paying for each of those residents?
Correct.
To have it picked up, because at a certain point, it's just cheaper for them to have called the company themselves.
Well,
And I'm guessing that we're getting very close to that.
Well, I'm looking
I
at
don't
this-
know the answer to that because it depends on how much you have versus I have versus the next guy, right? And how many houses actually got picked up. But in general, this is not a service that, to me, that the city should be paying for in the first place because, Steve's trash is not my problem. So,
well, Mark's trash is not my problem either. but
this is true. So, to that point, I don't think the taxpayers should be subsidizing other taxpayers for their trash. Now, if we can look at, because we don't have a big recycling program, like Olathe has all their, bins everywhere, once a year where, sometimes you can have different companies come in, like an e-scrap day, those type of things, and drop off TVs or other things. Overland Park has the one that we saw on the flyer. That might reduce a lot of the things that people are throwing out potentially, to where then they only have a small amount that they actually need to throw away, and then maybe it is only 15 or 20 or 30 bucks for them.
Yep.
So I would be in favor of pulling this off for this year and possibly forever, but definitely for this year.
The thing that got me and a lot of other folks thinking was, look at the price per ton on this, based on the graph that we got from Michael on this. Talking about going from somewhere south of $100 to $120 a ton up to $220 now. I mean, it's just becoming a lot more expensive. It's becoming a lot more of a burden on our budget. And in this day and age, when we know the revenues are down countywide, from the standpoint of tax revenues, I don't know if we can stomach this year.
Well, and I'm rounding up, Mayor, but we're about $600,000 in the red right now. So this 50,000, I'm rounding up generally
77,
speaking.
according to this.
Well, that's more than 10% of what we're down. So I think it behooves us to make good financial decisions versus the other. So I'd move to remove this.
No, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm in the minority, I guess, but did we not look at this as part of the budget as part of our updated?
Yeah, the budget was
currently in the
55.
budget.
So if you recall,
Right.
we did make that a contingency item. So we said that we were removing it from the budget, we would revisit it at a later time. So this is just the later time.
But the budget was only 55,000?
Correct, yeah.
We're at 77 now.
The
But that was
estimate is
before,
77.
wasn't that before the,
Yes, that was the
Changes.
estimates before we put limitations on it.
correct, yeah.
So the
Wow.
limitations were intended to keep us closer to the $55,000 that was budgeted. But the tonnage cost went up 30% in 1 year, so.
Yeah,
that
that's
kind of-
a big change. So we can't really change that. That means we'd have to collect basically 30% less tonnage to make it even.
And that tonnage cost increase, we've just recently found that out since,
When did we do the pricing on that?
Yeah,
when was that found?
Mike
the-
bid it.
Yeah, Michael?
There you
yeah.
go.
So the tonnage cost, we bid the project back in, right around, I believe, the end of March, 1st of April. And the tonnage cost at that time, Gardner Disposal provided that $220 a ton. And we rebid those here just in the last few weeks, and they kept that same pricing.
I missed that last part.
And we visited with them about these cost increases. They do haul to the Olathe transfer station in order to be able to get the project done as quickly as possible. It's obviously running a lot of work, or a lot of trucks and a lot of people, and so they have to utilize the transfer station. And those costs since 2017 have more than doubled. Their actual debris dump fees have gone from $30 to $70. And I'd say, as far as the program, most of the cities that still run this type of program are kind of all in the same boat, and they're all revisiting it and planning on making either major changes or eliminating the programs altogether. Overland Park, I talked to them, and they've seen their pricing. They're a lot bigger, so they get a lot better pricing. They've seen their costs go from I think $105, excuse me, to about $180 just over the last few years. So, we're seeing tremendous increases in the cost for this type of service.
Okay. Well, it sounds like from the standpoint of just simple math, it's gonna be hard for us to justify that this year, so. I mean, we can take this off and then revisit it again next year. When and if we have better budget situation, or if we can look at other alternatives that are more free market based, as Councilman Kogorsik stated, that would be more palatable. So, we don't have to do any motion to get rid of that off the consent agenda. All we have to do is just strike it, and then we don't consider it. And then because of that, since it's not included within the existing budget, it won't be executed. Okay. So, is that consensus on the part of the council to do that?
Yep.
Not consensus, no, but that's fine.
That's fine. We have a majority, so. All right, well, thank you very much. Let's move on to the planning and zoning consent agenda. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the planning and zoning consent agenda? Is there anything that we need to consider,
So we need to pull
Attorney?
two and make a, modification.
All right, we're making a modification on two,
Yeah,
so.
well, it has to do with an easement. So Ryan will talk about the language that,
Okay,
it's a condition.
we just have to amend the motion.
Yeah, it's an
Condition.
extra condition for approval.
Okay, so we're going to remove item 2 from the consent agenda, is that correct?
From the planning and zoning?
From the planning and zoning consent
Okay.
agenda, yes. So I'll entertain a motion on planning and zoning consent agenda, item number 1.
So moved.
Second?
Motion, Baldwin, second, Gregorczyk, that we approve planning and zoning consent agenda, item number 1. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? Planning and zoning consent agenda, item number 1 passes. Planning and zoning consent agenda, item number 2, consider accepting the dedication of right-of-way and easements for final plat FP-20-03 for Prairie Trace Estates first plat. City Attorney, what do we need to modify?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have, since this was approved at the Planning Commission, we have had further discussions with Water One about the nature of the easement that they require for the installation of the water main. There is a 15-foot utility easement just west of Clare Road, and per Water One's specifications, they require 20 feet instead of 15. It's my understanding Jim's talked with the developer about this requirement, and so we would request a stipulation be added to the acceptance of dedications of right-of-way and easements, that a revised drawing showing a 20-foot utility easement just west of Clare Road be reflected on the revised drawing.
Okay, I got that. All right, so I will entertain a motion on the acceptance of the dedication right-of-way easements on final plat for Prairie Trace Estates 20-03 to incorporate a 20-foot easement west of Clare Road.
So moved.
Second. Motion Winter, second Baldwin, that we accept the dedications of right-of-way easements for final plat FP-20-03 for Prairie Trace Estates first plat as amended to include language for a 20-foot easement west of Clare Road. Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Planning and zoning consent agenda item number 2 passes as amended. Committee recommendation item number 1, consider adopting an ordinance amending provisions of chapter 13-35 of the Gardner Municipal Code relating to inflow and infiltration and fats, oils, and grease discharge programs. Johns Garcia, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Yeah, this item came about in the 2017 wastewater master plan that was updated, and they recommended implementing 2 programs: the inflow and infiltration program, and the fats, oil, and grease, known as FOG program. As you may remember, in 2018, an inflow and infiltration program was adopted by the city. During the implementation, the current Gardner Municipal Code was reviewed and found to have no references related to preventing I&I or fats, oils, and grease, the FOG. So we're amending the chapter 13.35 of the municipal code, and that was presented to the UAC on June 6, 2020, and they approved a recommendation to City Council for the amendment. During the presentation, they had a lot of questions, so staff decided to do a small presentation for the City Council to highlight the points of the ordinance, because there's a lot of information. So the first addition to the ordinance is, if I can find it here, is section 13.35, 095, infiltration and prevention. It states no person shall make connection either directly or indirectly of roof downspouts, interior of exterior foundation, of footing drains, area drains, crawl space drains, and other sources of surface runoff, groundwater to a building sewer or building drain, which is connected to a public sanitary sewer directly. In addition, nor shall any person break, damage, destroy, uncover, deface, tamper with, alter, or substantially impair the use of any fittings, joints, plugs, caps, of parts of a plugged building drain or building sewer to prevent inflow from such sources directly or indirectly into a public sanitary sewer system. So that will give us, will make any connections not allowed. For the second part on the FOG program, Jeff Lemire, he's a utility senior staff engineer. He'll do a presentation on the program. Right.
Good evening, staff, council. Jeff Lemire, as Gans said, I'm the senior utilities staff engineer. Moving forward into the FOG portion of the code revision, this program pertains to food service facilities within the city of Gardner that create fats, oils, and grease. The code being proposed will help minimize the impacts to the collection system from these fats, oils, and grease, and help prevent backups and plugs within our system for the health and safety of our residents and businesses downstream from these sources. Okay, so question is why? Why? Because currently line maintenance spends 2 weeks a month performing monthly inspections pertaining to fats, oils, and grease, and root issues and low points within the system where these fats, oils, and grease collect. Typically, that's a 3 to 4 man line maintenance staff crew performing this work, which is approximately 160 hours a month, 1,900 hours a year. This manpower could be used to do something better. How? The FOG program, as being outlined in the code edition, will provide permitting, design requirements, processes, and procedures for cleaning those devices, handling failed devices, inspection of those installed devices, and tracking of these items. The main method used is grease interceptors, which help prevent blockages, spills, and hopefully reduce our O&M costs for grease within our system. These interceptors will be installed at food service facilities to prevent fog from entering the system. Most of the major restaurants, McDonald's, Burger King, KFC just put in a larger interceptor last year. They followed the Johnson County wastewater regulations, and that's what our system is being based off of. So, also with spending the 2 weeks every month performing fog and root and low spot maintenance, our line maintenance staff is also going around to lift stations with the wastewater treatment staff, cleaning out all the lift stations that grease clog up. The middle picture is a chunk of grease. We don't want that going down in the system. That's as big as a man's foot. So you can see there's a lot of different debris and stuff that gets caught up in these grease clogs at lift stations. So that's another important reason why we want to introduce this. Okay, so what do other utility providers do with their fog program? Johnson County Wastewater uses the permit process that we are looking at implementing here in Gardner with an annual permit fee of $348. Olathe funds the program through building permits and system development fees. The city of McPherson, Kansas uses a monthly fee based on your wastewater billing category, and that is $100 to $110 per month that they charge these facilities. We're recommending a permit process and annual permitting fee following the Johnson County's program, which has been the basis of most programs in our area. How are we going to implement this? As stated, the code's going to be an annual permit-based system that allows for multiple options to deal with the collection of fog before it enters the collection system. There are variances, waivers, and interceptor design options depending upon the business type, location, and discharge rates of the facilities. The proposed fee, as of now, that you guys can modify or decide what it is, me and Ryan Denk and Gons have discussed this, and we've looked at $250 being our annual fee. And this covers the review of the initial development, the first year of operation fees, and the inspections. And if replacement, like KFC comes in where they need their system broke down, they need to repair it, that $250 fee will then be assessed to that year's annual rate. City staff will be performing these inspections, providing business owners with informational packets to educate these business owners through the inspection and tracking process. The code also entails re-inspection fees, as most other communities had in their documents. First reinspection was $100, the second 200, third 300. The code also has specific design standards. And this information will all be uploaded to the utilities website along with other educational materials that we've already put together upon code approval. Now getting a little bit more into the details, the existing facilities are exempt from the code, provided they are not found to be contributing to the fog system issues. If found to be contributing to the fog, in the collection system, an inspection of the existing facility will occur, and if deficiencies are found, a notice will be sent to the owner. The notice could include just a recommended new maintenance program. It could entail additional training for staff on site, additional BMPs being added to their system, or within the code, we have also stated that if they cannot come into compliance using those methods, that they must come into full compliance with the code within 2 years. That allows them to budget and figure out how they're gonna handle the situation. The code also allows for alternative grease removal systems besides the standard interceptor, except for that requires a variance process, which is outlined in the code as well. All right. Looks like I went. As I have already previously said, staff's created a lot of documents for this program to be included on the city website: permit applications, design standards, checklists for developers, educational documents. And to implement this code, staff will need to be trained to perform these inspections. Our plan is, and we are currently working with Johnson County Wastewater to host their inspectors, have our staff go and shadow them on some inspections so that we can see the different types of businesses and what kind of fog is being created at those, so that our inspectors are trained and ready to go when we can begin this process.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Anything else? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, just can't. Any questions?
Oh, I'm gonna let you hold for the questions for now. I'm gonna open this up for public comments. This is a new business item, so I will ask if there's any public comment on new business item number 1. Seeing none, any questions for Jeff or for Gons on this?
Yeah, I've got several, Mayor. How many commercial locations would be affected by this?
I do not have the total number of commercial businesses that would be affected by this.
Okay.
But we would be teaming up with other city staff to compile that list of businesses so that we can review all of those and make contact and start the process.
And so once you make contact, start the process, I'll just use myself as an example. Randy Bakery and Pasta would have 2 years to become compliant.
That's if you're found to have fog issues.
Okay. The second question I had, would churches with kitchens be required to partake in this program?
I don't believe we would include them because they're not a commercial facility.
Okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't qualify as a food service facility,
Okay.
which is what the act covers.
Okay. And then what is the penalty? Excuse me?
I was thinking of those fish fries over at the Catholic Church.
Well, yeah, that's a good example. Make sure you come, Mayor.
I try to.
And then what's the penalty thereafter if Randy's Bakery is not compliant and he has fog problems after the second year? Cause I saw all the inspection fees and operating fees, but I didn't see any sort of, you're not in compliance fee.
I mean, enforcement actions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't say in here.
Ryan, do you remember?
Yeah, I'm looking for it here. Just looking for the appropriate section.
And
So
maybe
it's a required permit that you have to
Okay.
operate a food service facility.
So I wouldn't be able to be open for
Right.
service until I get compliant.
Right.
Okay, so that's the.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had, Mayor, thank you.
No, not a problem. Councilman Baldwin?
Through our normal cleaning process using the Vector, is it possible to determine with the locations that we have, spots that we can enter the system, if business A is contributing versus business B, because it is a grease base that's gonna stick to the pipes more? In other words, is it possible, instead of everybody paying an inspection fee yearly for something they may not be doing, that we could determine who is at fault and charge them with some sort of penalty or get them into compliance, rather than everybody paying across the board?
With the CCTV program in place, the cammering of the sewer system, we can narrow that down. And there's a lot of times where you can actually see it coming into the system in their laterals. So there are businesses that we already know are not compliant. And it's just a matter of trying to make the system better.
Sure. I'm just thinking, having an additional business fee just because is never good, but I didn't know if the system, with the camera and everything else, if we were capable of determining that this business has this problem, because if we can, then I think that would be better to attack it that way and go after those that are the contributors, rather than having everyone pay a fee for something that they essentially aren't doing anything about. I mean, we could still send out the educational side of it.
Mark, I'll agree with you, and I was gonna lead into that question, so I absolutely agree. If there's a way to not impose a new fee on existing businesses, which is I think what you're saying, yeah, I'm definitely for that.
Well, I believe that in the language of the ordinance itself, and the sections that are being modified in the city code, it states there that any businesses that were existing before this ordinance was enacted are exempt from these requirements unless they have a significant fog issue that exists now. So
there is no.
So there is an exemption for
Yeah.
existing businesses.
Exactly.
The only time they have to come in compliance is if we camera it and we find that their business is
Exactly.
producing fog.
Yeah, there's a trigger mechanism.
But to me then, if we're doing that mechanism for the pre-existing, then the new should be under the same umbrella.
I think that's what he's saying.
No, I'm saying, why would you charge a new business July 21st a $250 fee if you're not charging one on July 19th? If you're still gonna use the camera to find out if he's doing what he shouldn't be doing. That's my point.
Would you just have new businesses make sure that they install the right stuff?
Correct.
As
During the
part of the
during the
permitting
planning
process?
process, we sit down with all the businesses. Bob usually leads those meetings, and everyone comes to the table with their requirements and whatnot. And the fog program is worldwide. I mean, it's all over the place. It's just a matter of how you want to.
I think the question is not necessarily that fog or grease interceptors, those kind of things are really needed for large food service businesses. We understand that. We don't want to have that grease coming into our system. I think the question that a lot of the folks here on this dais have is, why do we have to issue another permit fee, a separate permit fee, over and above the other permit fees that we currently have for businesses that are coming into town, to ensure that they've installed the grease interceptors when they're already part of the planning process up front? Am I not mistaken in that question?
Yes.
Is that what
Right,
we're looking
I
at?
think we could update the design standards to force that.
Yeah.
On the front side.
Right.
Yeah, and then they know that that's a prerequisite for their development, and we don't have to, have a additional permitting fee to for that particular action. Does that make sense? It would just be under our existing permits as we currently have
And
them.
then just penalize thereafter.
if they're in non-compliance, because we can monitor that.
Yeah.
Right.
Am I not mistaken?
Well,
So-
when we talked about the appropriate fee, I stressed that it needs to be representative of the city's costs in doing the inspections themselves. So it's not just a fee that isn't associated with city activity and city inspection. After it goes in the first time, there's continued re-inspections, right, Jeff?
Correct, there would be an annual inspection. The plan is to divide the town up into quadrants and then inspect certain areas, you know, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, so on,
Just to ensure compliance.
just to ensure compliance. And that's how, as far as the research that I've done, all communities
Okay, so the annual,
provide
so the
annual
annual,
inspections.
the annual, because it says here, the plan review fee, I think is what we're talking about here, subsection 1 of this section. Talks about the grease interceptor plan review fee, which is basically the $250 would be another fee as part of the plan review process that would be imposed on the business for that portion of the plan that needs to be reviewed. Am I not mistaken on that, Bob? I believe that's what this is for. So this is upfront. This is the upfront cost at the very beginning when they're first putting in that food service business, that there's a $250 review fee.
Right, we would review it and make sure that the appropriate devices are installed at that time, and then that $250 would be their fee for that year.
For that, but it would
Then
only,
it would be,
what I'm saying is then you're gonna be giving them a $250 fee, you're assessing them a $250
Annual fee.
every year after that.
But existing business, if they get inspected, they don't have to pay the $250 fee because they're grandfathered in?
They're grandfathered in unless,
But they're
they're
still getting
found-
inspected every year?
unless they're found to have fog issues.
That doesn't seem
See,
right.
so what
I
do you-
doesn't seem right
think
to
there's
me.
a
first year.
question about this. Yeah,
Yeah.
come on.
I think the design standards are good to be added. If there's an additional overhead for having that inspection initially, you know, that's part of the inspection process, maybe the inspection fee is slightly higher for those type of businesses. But to have just a big fee up front and then have it ongoing, it seems to be unnecessary.
And that was one reason why I looked at what other communities are doing, and Olathe covers it through their development and building process
Exactly.
fees.
Yeah.
But then Johnson County wastewater is what we're kind of modeling this program off of, and they use a fee, and their fee was $348 a year, annual. And then there was the city of McPherson that charges businesses $100 to $110 a month fee.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So
Does-
it just depends on how
I
the
would
code
rather,
is set up and what you want.
Is
how you
Johnson
wanna handle
County
it.
doing their fee because they don't charge penalties if you are found non-compliant?
Well, in this, there are no fees. It's just basically that your business is gonna be shut down because that's part of the permitting.
So maybe we go down that process where you can't get your permit, but maybe there's a fine schedule instead that we could look
For
at, because
non-compliance.
really, using the cameras and whatnot, we're not adding a whole lot of overhead because we're already doing that inspection. So I don't think the utilities really pay an extra. Now, if there's problems, we have to clean it out and it takes more time and energy for our crew, and it's harder on our equipment, we gotta recoup that somehow. But seems like that would be either because of their dereliction, they have to pay a fine.
correct.
So
Let's punish violators and not just punish all businesses that are trying to do business here.
that's what I see.
Once you've
But are you
established
able
them,
to
they're
pinpoint-
established. I mean,
Are you able to pinpoint, again, I'll use myself, Randy's Bakery, are you able to pinpoint my commercial business being a contributor to fog?
There are some businesses in town that we can pinpoint it's coming from their service.
And the reason why I ask that is because if we align with what Councilman Baldwin said, then we'd have to have pinpoint, knowledge that Randy's Bakery is contributing to this so that we can penalize them or shut them down or both,
Well, and what this code allows us to do is go in and inspect it as well,
which is proactive, absolutely.
which then typically you're gonna find their devices either clogged or completely not working. how they're designed to work and just allowing that to go down the
Down the
lateral.
drain.
And you would be able to see that in a clean out
Right.
or in the device itself being clogged.
So going back to the plan review fee of $250, was that, and I heard what you said, Ryan, but a more specific question, is that $250 built around recoup of labor cost, or is that truly built around a amortized or a comparable fee within the city's fee structure?
Are you asking?
I don't know, I was just kind of looking at both of them.
We did look at other city fees.
Okay.
Is there a possibility that we could take some of the aspects of WLAPA's system, which seems to be more based on incorporated as part of the general development fees for different types of businesses, and just deal with it like that? I mean,
You'd still have an annual fee though, wouldn't you?
we would, what I was saying is that if there's a need to inspect, that those inspections will be done on a case-by-case basis. And
Because
then,
if Tori had a tire shop,
Yep.
she wouldn't fall into that category at
Correct.
all, right?
Absolutely.
But
She wouldn't
Randy's
even get-
bakery shop that does nothing but fried pies,
yeah,
like McDonald's old pies, I would be in that structure.
yes,
Okay.
that's correct. But you see, we already are doing permitting based on type of business classification. We're already doing that, so it wouldn't make much difference to incorporate that into our existing, classifications for different types of development. I mean, it would make it a lot easier, a lot simpler for the business too, I think.
Yeah, I think you check up front, they know what they have to do to be open and stay
Education.
open.
Yep.
We could educate everyone on just better usage of the system.
Yeah. 'Cause I don't want our fee structure to be a cash cow. I'm not interested in doing that. And I understand that we're trying to recoup costs.
Yeah,
But-
the way the ordinance is, I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't get.
No, go on.
The way the ordinance is written at section 13.35.035.5, permitting requirements for existing grease interceptors is there is a required annual permitting process under subsection D.
Yep.
And so each year they have to re-permit and have to satisfy the requirements of that section. So I'm assuming there's gonna be staff time associated with that.
Right.
But we can then also take that into consideration within the permitting development fees we currently have. I mean, that's not something that
I don't know why we would need to revisit it every year. As we're doing the inspections, the normal inspections of the system, not something special for this.
Well, how often do we do food service inspections, period, within our city?
I don't mean food service, I mean the lines. When we're cleaning out the lines, and we've got the camera and we're checking them anyway,
Yes.
right? And we find construction 2x4s and you name it, shoved down the pipes. But when we're doing that, then you see the evidence of something, that gives you the probable cause to start looking further. And then I think that's when we adjust our fine structure, if we create one, that would cover that additional manpower.
Our current annual line inspection, not every line gets inspected every year. It's actually technically closer to 5 or 6 years.
We have a lot of lines, guys,
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
and not very many people.
So that's also,
That's a good point.
And it's, when you read the code, it's not like you plug this thing in and it's done.
Right.
I mean, there are ongoing, regular, every 90-day maintenance requirements, pumping requirements. You've got to verify that it's a hauler that is recognized by the county and the city, and that can change year over year.
and that they're bringing it to a place that actually will treat it appropriately.
But wouldn't that be as simple though as you collect the information and you send in a form that updates who's handling it?
Yeah, that's part of the permitting.
Right, so I mean, couldn't they just update it on file every year, and if they're not updated, then you don't reissue a permit, but you don't have to get charged for it? I mean, we're not doing a whole lot of work there.
It's your ordinance. They can say what you want to do.
Just so I got this all straight, if you're an existing business, you're gonna be looking and checking them out. If you suspect they're contributing to the fog, then you can investigate further. Other than that, there are no fees.
No.
They're just-
So Todd's
just
Diner
penalty.
or Blazers, you know, those companies are pretty much, you know, they're grandfathered in.
But any new people would have to pay $250 every year.
Yes, so a new business opening up, Todd's Diner next door to Todd's Diner, has to pay every year, correct?
As it currently stands right now.
It's currently, yeah.
And that doesn't make sense. I mean, once they've paid the first year or had the initial inspection, then to me, they become an existing along with everyone else. Just me.
All right, so it sounds like we've got a bit of a consensus here to move forward with maybe looking at the Olathe model, maybe shelving this for another meeting to get this, yes, Gons, you have,
Yes, just to recap, which fees are the ones that would like to remove? Because we have 4, the plan review fee, that can be part of the development.
Yep.
Then you have the operating fee. Then we have a reinspection fee. That means that if somebody fails to make any corrections and we have to go reinspect it, there should be some kind of a fee because they didn't fix the problem.
I totally agree, that's a penalty, that's a penalty, so yeah, we understand that.
And then we have the variance request processing fee. That if they want to make any changes. So which fee are we?
I think we're looking at 1 and 2, Gons. We're looking at 1 and 2, which is the plan review fee, and whether or not we want to assess that for every food service business that is coming into the city, in addition to their existing food service permitting fees that they're already paying. And then the operating fee on an annual basis. So in order to get their permit renewed, they have to pay $250 every single year. Am I not mistaken for that?
Those are the
Yeah.
ones I would strike.
I mean,
yes.
I understand how this probably came about and how it's being proactive. You're checking everybody all the time, right? But because Todd's Diner B is not getting, or is getting checked and A is not, you're still gonna have to go further inspection to determine how much is being contributed, right? And I think you're still gonna wanna find schedule at the end of the day, even if we are proactive for somebody who's a big contributor to a problem. Just because everybody pays $250, if your bakery is putting in 10 times what his is, well then you should be paying a bigger percentage of the cleanup cost.
I'd agree.
So I think if we go down that model of hitting those that contribute the problem,
The big
then-
violators.
then the operating fee kind of goes away.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question, Gons, and thank you for stepping up to the podium. Is the plan review fee of $250 in addition to the operating fee of $250? So Randy's Bakery would have $500?
No.
The operating fee is waived the first year.
Okay.
Plan review fee.
Okay, thank you. So what I would suggest is to eliminate the plan fee and increase the inspection fee slightly, which would go back to what Mark was
Out
saying.
of compliance. So
Yeah,
now
the
we're-
out of
now we're-
compliance.
now
The
we're-
reinspection fee.
Yes, sir.
But what would you do with,
Reinspection.
what would you do with the operating fee?
I would eliminate it.
Eliminate it.
I would too.
Okay, so what's the discussion on the reinspection fees? What are we comfortable with? If we're eliminating the $250, we have $100 for the first reinspection, $200 for the second, and $300 for the third.
And any subsequent beyond that, so.
Yes, sir. What are we wanting to raise those reinspection fees to?
I wouldn't change them.
Okay,
I would add a penalty schedule, fines for what happens after that inspection.
okay,
So if we have to do like a X number of hours of cleanup for that gross violator, that is then tacked on as a penalty?
okay, so let's just say we spend 100 hours at $20 an hour, and I know you guys are worth more than that. 35 is probably a better number, so $35 an hour at 100 hours, just to keep the math simple.
Yep.
Are we trying to recoup
$500?
100%, 50%? What are we trying to recoup here in that fee?
I think you try to get as much as possible, but no one fee ever recoups 100% of anything.
No,
Okay.
it does not.
So I think we would have to, actually basically do it empirically. We'd have to collect some data on this and see what happens. How much time are we really spending? What does it take?
And
you
then
know,
bill it back, then
and then
bill it
kind of
back
figure it
to-
out after the fact.
Yeah.
But if we're, so are we inspecting annually still? Because how do you know they haven't been, their system didn't break 4 months ago and we've been treating their grease for 4 months in our system?
I guess how would you know if any existing business is same thing?
When we would come through and do our line maintenance inspections, that's when we would find it. So we truly don't know when the
Right.
fog started.
So you're saying it might be every 5 to 6 years that we find out,
Right.
right?
How does the city of Olathe deal with it? Because I know that they don't do an annual inspection fee.
They
What's
do
the-
annual inspections
They-
of commercial
Of
and
only the commercial
industrial
businesses?
and industrial businesses.
Okay, so that's a small subset of what we have in town here, right? I mean, we don't have a very large.
Compared to what they have, yeah.
Correct,
They
So-
have a couple full-time staff and that's their whole job.
exactly. So my question is from the standpoint of businesses that would be quote unquote subject to permit, which is a small subset of all of our enterprises and residences that are in town. Can we manage that volume with existing resources? Are we gonna, I mean, I'm trying to gauge the need for a $250 per business fee for permitting.
Currently, it's not being performed.
Okay,
So that is another thing that we're looking at, the staff that is being advertised right now. This would be one of the programs that they would be working on.
Jim, you got something to add? Okay. I'm just asking questions here, trying to get around this, because if there is a need to pay additional staff or pay additional costs to make this work, you know.
Basically, from what I can tell,
And-
if you have the operating fee with the inspection, then there's the potential, I guess, that you go 3 years without a business being in compliance, a brand new business, right? Because they get inspected today, it goes down tomorrow, you get basically a year, and then you've got 2 years to come into compliance, right?
Correct.
So I've got 3 years that business could be down. How does that compare to being down for 5 or 6, depending on what comes around? So I guess that question would be, can we get back to those particular lines? I know certain lines get hit more often than others, particularly the older ones. Could we get back to those lines quicker than 5 or 6 years, more like 3 years? And if so, what would be the hit to the line maintenance crew to do so?
The major grease contributors right now, those lines, we are flushing every month. So we have a good idea of exactly what businesses need to be inspected now and taken care of
Okay.
immediately.
So if we educated and we put in something for those that are causing trouble that you already probably have on the list, and then they clean that up, then as those monthly flushes are going through, we'll see hopefully an improvement.
Correct. Hopefully that will reduce, which will free up our line maintenance staff to go do their annuals.
And ultimately
And then
lower
instead of
costs.
being every 5 to 6 years getting through the lines, we could get those closer to 2 to 4.
So I think the answer is more labor, not more fees.
I would agree.
And the labor would come with a cost, obviously. But if we want to do this right and inspect it more often, in the name of being proactive, you've got to have more labor.
I'd agree, but I don't know if we need to do that yet, because if we're already there once a month, flushing these lines.
Well,
Then-
for the targeted list, we are.
Correct, but they're probably your biggest hitters,
I
right?
understand.
So we get them in compliance, right, because the fine schedule initiates that, and so you don't give them 2 years initially, shorten it a little bit. And then, once they come into compliance, then instead of going every month, maybe they start going every 2 months, every 3 months, every 6 months. And then if we still are doing too much, or we've grown too much, we add somebody else.
I would note that I think you're gonna know if the grease interceptor is working. They've got record keeping requirements. When they and you know, there are requirements in the code as to when the pumping has to occur of the grease interceptor. You know, if there's a huge drop off in the amount of grease being captured or the pickups, it's required to be recorded in their record keeping in their logs when we come through and inspect. So you're gonna know if something's off through that permitting process.
Okay.
And another aspect is the installation of these devices. Depending on what size you have, most of the restaurant style places would be required to have 1,000 to 2,000 gallon grease interceptor. And those, just for the parts alone, are between $3,000 to $10,000 depending on what they have. So that does not include the contractor to come in and install that. So that's another reason why we had thought about the delayed, 2-year come into compliance.
Well, I get that, but that would be if you had an existing business, I would think, not
Correct.
a brand new business.
Correct.
Right? If he's brand new and he's met the code, why does he need 2 years? He's already probably perfect, right? Something just broke,
Ideally.
right? So I don't know why a new business would need 2 years.
I don't believe it does. According to this, the grace period for compliance.
Only pertains to existing businesses.
Yeah, it pertains to existing businesses that have been around since before July 21st.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So if I can make a suggestion, since this is a new program and we're just getting started, we can put in place and then see what things we identify, lessons learned, and then see if the operating fees merit or not, based on our experience and what we find out, to get it just started. So I'm saying let's waive that fee. Let us go and do the implementation, learn from what we learn from what we find, and then see if there's a need to put a fee or not.
See, I think that's a good idea.
Right. So collect your empirical
Implementing
data.
it without the fee structure initially, just to do the education piece and do the mitigation piece makes some sense, because my experience has been once government levies a fee, the fee never goes away. So I'd rather that we not levy it, and that we not initially levy it and then consider taking it out at some point in the future, because that'll never happen.
So Gons, we would just focus on item number 3 of 13.35.035.9.
Correct, 3 and 4.
3 and 4, and then the 1 will be part of the
Okay,
development.
Correct.
I can agree with that.
So we will hold 1 and 2 in abeyance. We'll strike them and go with 3 and 4 for reinspection. Is there anything that needs to change in other portions of this ordinance in order to be able to make that work?
So what's the empirical data period of time that we need? 2 years, Gons, a year?
I think within 1 year, we should be able to determine.
And then we can revisit this in a future, or we can actually put in there some sort of thing, council shall by ordinance
That's where I was going. is let's put a year
impose
on it.
fees as appropriate
Let's
Yeah.
put a year on it so we trigger through the city administrator and the director.
within 12 months of enactment of this
Maybe
ordinance.
slide a flag
Council
so we can
shall
look
by
at it again.
ordinance.
Yep.
Right,
enact
because that's the other
fees.
thing is, as we educate the businesses, if we don't have a fee structure or anything else, they might bide their time as much as possible until that, now you want me to pay $50,000 to fix this?
Is that something we can add on the fly here, city attorney? Add language in there
I would suggest
saying
we
that?
bring this back, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, do we want to pull this then and have it reintroduced at the next meeting?
You wanna table it then?
Table it?
Well, yeah, do we want to just do an education campaign and strike this completely for a
No.
while? Or are you saying you want to implement
saying
it
table it for
completely,
the next
just fix
meeting.
what it says?
Fix
Yeah,
the
let's-
ordinance language
Yeah,
to include
and let's bring
the
it back. I move that we table it.
applicable ordinance
Yeah,
for
let's
fee
table it.
schedule, and then just table it for the next meeting.
Yeah, I
with
move
those-
that we table it, sir.
And give city attorney the opportunity to look through the entire change to the code and make those modifications. All right?
Yep.
I have a motion to table?
Second?
No, I need to have a motion to table.
I've already motioned once.
Move to table, second for, who made the second? Okay. So motion, Gregorsek, second Baldwin, we table, new business item number 1. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Actually, this is not new business item, this is committee recommendation, my apologies. So we have a motion second, we have an aye and no opposition. So committee recommendation item number 1 is tabled. Thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll have that considered at the next meeting. Thank you. New business item number 1. Consider adopting an ordinance amending the City of Gardner's base salary structure fiscal year 2019-20. Alan Abramovitz.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you doing
Thank
tonight?
you. Currently, we have a job entitled Engineering Tech 2, but we do not have an Engineering Tech 1. So all we're trying to do now is to establish that job. And that'll help us in recruiting. There's no additional cost associated with it. In fact, we might be able to hire someone at a less expensive salary. So we are recommending adopting an ordinance amending the City of Gardner's base salary structure fiscal year 2019-2020. The background and description of the item is staff recommends the creation of an Engineering Tech 1 position for both the Utilities and Public Works Department in order to aid in recruitment of engineering technicians for both departments. This position will provide the city with increased flexibility when hiring for these difficult to fill positions, as it will allow for consideration of individuals who may not currently meet all of the requirements for an Engineering Tech 2, but could eventually move into such a position with additional on-the-job experience and training. The Engineering Tech 1 position is intended to be the entry-level classification in the Engineering Tech position series and will be distinguished from the Engineering Tech 2 position by its enhanced focus on performance of the more routine tasks. So, are there any questions or?
I will open it up for public comment on new business on number 1. Seeing none, any questions from the dais? See you reaching for the microphone, Councilman Gorsuch?
Yes, just a quick clarification, and maybe I missed it both times I looked, but where is the Engineering Tech 2 position listed on the scale?
It is on grade, I'll tell you here in a second. Let me get to it. It's grade 4.
Yeah, 4. It's engineering technician.
Engineering
Public
technician
Works.
2. The 2 is kind of hidden there, Public Works and
yep.
Utilities.
Thank you. That's all I had, sir.
Okay, great. Anybody else? This looks pretty cut and dry to me, unlike the last item. All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gorsuch, second Baldwin, that we adopt ordinance number 2669, an ordinance adopting a revised City of Gardner base salary structure for fiscal year 2019-20. I'm assuming that this is also going to be incorporated into 2021 and 22 as well.
Yes, absolutely.
City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Gorsuch?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2669 passes. That was easy. All right, let's move on to council updates. Does staff have anything for council? I'm going to start with our Public Works, Michael Kramer. Do you have anything on your end?
Yeah, good evening. Just a couple of things. Because first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So last week, our contractor at Waverly Road at 175th Street I hope you noticed in the Friday Minute Memo, they did just a tremendous amount of work over the last 2 weeks. And we're able to open up the intersection on Friday afternoon late to both the south and to the west, so the intersection at 175th and Waverly. And then on Saturday, they were able to open it then to the north as well. So they met that timeline despite weather setbacks and the asphalt plant of their subcontractor breaking down for a short time and waiting on some water line parts. And so just a really good job by them and by our staff overseeing that work. And I did want to let you know that then Santa Fe between Poplar and Waverly does remain closed to through traffic while they do that work. And so as they are doing that work, any traffic through there may be under construction, and so the contractors will work with those folks getting to their homes and make sure they're safe and can travel safely. Waverly Road itself, north of the intersection, will have to close one more time for some utility work. We're going to make sure that we work with our school district and make sure they don't have any events going on around that time. We will need to close down, and the reason being the contractor has to dig a pretty deep hole just right next to the roadway. And so to keep traffic through there, it would be unsafe for the traffic and the contractor. And hopefully we'll be able to limit that to, maybe 3 or 4 days for a week. But we'll keep the council and the public updated on that closure. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is last week, KDOT notified us that we received a $1 million award for US 56. And so that's an additional $1 million, originally slated for the years 2022 and 2023. And so it's for a project to go from Moonlight Road to Old 56 and replace that pavement in there. So it's another pavement restoration project. And we worked with our finance department to make sure we could get that worked into our budget. And then also we worked with KDOT. And so this all occurred in a very short time span last week as far as the notice and making some things happen. Conversations with our finance and with our city administrator, and then I reached back out to KDOT, and we are going to combine that project with our existing project. So rather than going from Sycamore to Moonlight and then turning it around in a couple years doing Moonlight to Old 56, we're going to be able to combine that to one project that will go from Sycamore east through Moonlight to Old 56. And so we've already started our design process from Sycamore to Moonlight. So we'll be working with our design contractor to amend that to include the additional work from Moonlight to Old 56. In total, combining those projects will allow us to hopefully have some cost savings to be able to do it all at once and do one project versus originally 2, if not 3. And then also, one construction time frame. And so in total, we're receiving $3 million from KDOT for the project. And we're going to be on the first phase of it contributing about $1.7 million, and then about another $700,000 for this. And so you'll see that CIP project revised in your budget. But I think it'll be overall, it's going to end up being a really good improvement. And especially when we consider being able to improve that railroad crossing out there east of Moonlight.
That's really good news, and I'll be happy to not be hearing on CFG about the constant pothole complaints on that stretch of road, because it is pretty bad, and if we can shorten that span on that portion east of Moonlight Road by getting it moved up in the calendar and have it as part of the same project, that is very good news.
Michael, can I ask, what will they be doing anything different this time around as far as the preparation or the how it's put together, how it's built?
Yeah, so what we'll do through the project, we'll be looking at the subgrade of the road bed and doing a new pavement design. We expect that we'll probably go back in concrete, but we will look at the life cycle cost of asphalt as well. And so when we do the roadway, it's not just patching the concrete or kind of shoring it up, which is what I believe it was in about 2010 or 2012, the KDOT went through and basically fixed every other joint, and now all of them are failing. But so it's a complete pavement restoration. So it's a remove and replace of the pavement and addressing any subgrade issues.
Hey, Mike, I had one question, just to clarify. You'll be working with New Century on the rail line that crosses Old 56 there, just east of Moonlight?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they own that line, so yeah, they can work with them. So from the standpoint of closures, I think there's a lot of questions among businesses regarding closures in that zone. Obviously, this is a full pavement reconstruction, whether it's asphalt or concrete. Do we have a plan, or have we started working on a plan to notify businesses or give them alternate means of access to their businesses during this process? Because I'm hearing a lot of questions on that.
Couple things. As we work through the design, we'll definitely be having some meetings with those folks and our design consultant. And then as the project's ongoing, KDOT's made it pretty clear that US 56 will need to carry two-way traffic, so at least one lane in each direction all the time. And then typically what you do when you cross businesses, you try and maintain their access as much as possible. You try and minimize the time that an access can be closed. And quite honestly, some of the time during the project, you're going to see driveways that are put in with temporary surfacing, temporary surfacing being rock. So that they can maintain access in and out. It's not pretty, but it works. And then that allows the contractor to do the removals they need and prepare to do the paving. And then there's just a temporary closure while the paving goes by that location.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to know that, I wanted businesses out there to know that we are definitely keeping that in mind and addressing those concerns. So.
And one other thing I'd add is that we are working and actually have upcoming meetings and such, and we're working with Price Chopper as there's some improvements that were delayed by them in order to coordinate better with our projects. And so we are working on, directly with them on coordinating some of those issues.
Specifically the signalization and the turn lanes that they've been asked to put in?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or any other comments, Michael, on your end? You got anything else for us, Michael?
No, not this evening.
Okay, great, thank you. Parks and Rec, Jason Bruce.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. You getting ready for fall sports seasons, or do we know what's going to be happening?
To be determined.
To be determined. Okay. Well, keep us informed. I'm already starting to get questions from folks about fall sports.
So are we.
I know. Utilities, Guns Garcia. Anything from your end other than our presentation tonight, which was very thorough, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Two items. The first one is related to the Water Watch. Except as reported on the Friday minute memo, we had a spike of 3.1 on July 13th, but on the average is about 2.8, which means that's pretty good news. I think we're not exceeding our Water Watch, but still we have another couple of weeks with hot weather. So I would like to keep that still ongoing until early August.
Sounds like our citizens' conservation efforts are working.
That's that's what I think, because I mean, we're way down compared to other years.
Great, that sounds good.
Then the second one on Hillsdale, I requested an emergency purchase for the Hillsdale Water Treatment Plant pond cleanout. As you may remember, Hillsdale Water Treatment Plant has two retention basins that are commonly referred as ponds or lagoons. They're used to hold all the sediments generated from the backwash that come from the clarifiers and the filters. Historically, we clean one pond a year. Last September, we cleaned the west pond and also the east pond. However, the east pond was removed completely to make room for the expansion. So right now the plant is operating on a single pond. It's been almost close to 1 year since the west pond was cleaned. And we're getting to a point that we need to clean the pond in order to be in compliance with our discharge. We looked for different companies, and there's only one company that can do can drain the pond while it's in operations, and that's Nutriject. And they're asking $76,400. The only problem is that they can only lower 24 inches, which means that at this point, I don't feel that the 24 inches is gonna be enough, which means that we can clean it 24 inches, and then a month later, we're gonna have to pay them again to lower an additional 24 inches. So we're looking at some options, and the best option I think we have at this point is if we can send the backwash from the plant into the new lagoon. And the reason for that is the new lagoon will be completed August 5th, and then we have to fill the lagoon with water to do a leak test. So instead of using raw water to fill the lagoons, we have requested Burns McDonnell to go to KDHE, see if we can send a backwash as a means of filling the lagoons. And then that will give us more room, in our existing pond. And hopefully we can avoid that $76,000 for lowering it 24 inches. So once we learn from KDHE, if we can do that, then I will let you know and see. I will let you know if we proceed with the lowering the pond 24 inches or not, which I don't think is a very, very cost-effective way of doing it.
Sure. Are we
Please speak.
confident? Are we confident that KDHE would be comfortable with that, considering that it might leak, or are we just hoping that they will like it?
The water that comes from the basin, there's the surface water, which is fairly clean. So basically you put in clean water. If you go to the bottom of the base of the basin or pond, you have the sediments. Right. So the idea is to hopefully send clean water to the new lagoon. You have to fill it up and do the test instead of wasting raw water from Hillsdale.
Yeah, that's backwash from the new filters.
So if that doesn't work, then we will have to pay Nutriject the $76,000 to lower the lagoon 24 inches.
Side note to that, did we ever try to recoup for the company that bailed on us for cleaning the lagoon last year?
The one that we had a contract with.
We had a contract with them, they said, we're too busy, don't do it, we had to go with somebody else.
And we had to pay a lot more money, if I remember correctly, to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, I can go back and pull the contract. They actually weren't contractually obligated to do that.
It was just an option, basically?
Right.
Okay.
And that they would quote us a number.
Okay.
Which is what they did.
Yeah.
The number was this big, so.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cons, appreciate it. Anything else, or, okay. Chief, Captain Crowd, what's going on your side of the, I said Chief Crowd, you never know, I just gave you a promotion.
You can barely see his face.
I know.
Nothing that I heard.
All right, great. Did we get any updates, any further updates on 4th of July, and any other further actions? And then there was also a question that came up about an incident that happened last week, that would, see if you might be able to address, which was the incident that happened last, I think it was Friday night, was it that correct, or Friday?
We talked about the shooting.
The shooting, yeah. So,
Well, as far as the 4th goes, there hasn't been any more updates from what Captain Hayes
okay.
Presented to you. And
Yes.
We really haven't received any more questions from anybody, so I think everybody was happy. Did you all receive his
Yes.
responses that he gave
Yes.
you? Okay.
Yes.
As far as the shooting goes, it's an ongoing investigation. I really can't discuss it openly right now, but it is an ongoing investigation.
Okay.
Detectives are working on it.
And that's Johnson County that's taking lead on that?
No, we're doing it.
Oh, we are doing that, okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, I appreciate that. I know that there was some questions about that, so we are aware of it and are investigating. City Clerk?
Nothing for me tonight.
Nothing. Finance Director?
Nothing tonight.
You'll have something next time. Quite a bit, as a matter of fact.
Coming up.
Yes, yes. City Attorney? City Administrator? Yes, I did not forget you this time.
I know the council was expecting an update on the potential project east of Moonlight. The reason you haven't received it is there hasn't been a lot of information. We communicated the city's position to representatives for the developer. And that information was, they did not come, they decided not to come and let the representatives be there. We really didn't receive any feedback to this point. But the related development is moving forward as planned, and we have assurances that that's going to happen. So as soon as I get additional information on the project or potential project east of Moonlight, I'll provide an update.
Okay, great, thank you, sure, thank you. Council, let's start with the council president this time, usually last, so I'll give him the first shot this time.
Oh, nothing for me, thank you.
Nothing, see?
Yeah.
I give the first shot and then you don't take it. Tori Roberts, Councilwoman Roberts.
I have nothing, but thank you for asking.
Nothing, wow. Councilman Baldwin.
I am good as well.
All right, Randy, it's all yours.
Well, I appreciate being last. It might be a good thing. And I'm gonna do my best here, Mayor, but this is, I'm gonna tread lightly out of respect. If we go back to, July the 8th, when, I personally, and I can't speak for anybody, on the dais or not, but I learned from Fox 4 News, that, Super 8 had been set up for COVID. And I have no problem with that. The problem that I have is that there was little to no communication from yourself to the elected members, and I found out later to our senior level or senior leadership team, so city administrator and directors, and or public informations officer. There was no communication. I called you at approximately 10:27 that night and learned that approximately 11 o'clock that morning, you knew about all this.
Not all this, but let's go
Well,
on.
generally speaking.
I'll let you finish your statement.
In the meantime, Sheriff Hayden, which I'm thankful for, reached out to Fox 4 News, which I spoke to as well, and they talked to the sheriff around noon on the 8th. And then Commissioner Brown provided a statement a little before 6, again, according to Fox 4.
Neither of those were with my knowledge.
Well, that's fine, sir. They're separate entities. And here we are with no communication from the mayor. So what I'd like to try to understand, and I'm really approaching this as a continuous opportunity, improvement opportunity, is how can we get better communication from the mayor's seat down to the elected and out to the senior level, senior leadership team, so that we can communicate and field questions from our community.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right, well, let me answer the questions or the statements as you have made them. First of all, I was indeed informed at 11:10 a.m. on Wednesday the 8th by the fire chief that there was going to be a non-congregate site that was already set up. It was not one that was going to be set up, it was already set up. At that time, I made notification to the fire chief that I would like to know what the communication plan was going to be, because obviously there were going to be people that were going to be asking questions. He stated to me that we were going to be doing a joint response with ourselves, the fire district, and the sheriff's department regarding this particular development. At the time, none of us had any knowledge, none of us in terms of the city of Gardner had any knowledge of this. The sheriff's office was completely caught unawares, and I think that that's what Mr. Hayden maintained in his segment for Fox 4. And so I was waiting on a joint statement. I also got a call about 20 minutes later by Mike Brown, our county commissioner, who basically essentially said the same thing. And I said the same thing to Mike Brown. So when is there going to be a joint statement? What do we need to do to put out communication? At that point, after that point, I did not hear anything until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I was told that both Cal Hayden and Mike Brown had made statements to Fox 4 News. At that point, we started working on our own separate press release because we did not have any information other than the fact that there was a non-congregate site being created. The first communication that we got in our offices was from the county manager, Penny Post Oak Ferguson, at approximately 4:50 in the afternoon, okay? That was forwarded to me and to the city administrator at the time, at the exact same time, right around 5 o'clock. So that was the email that I sent then to the members of the governing body. Yes, it came after 10 p.m. We were still working on our statement. We did not have the full information at the time. And I was not going to go and give a release to anybody without having the full information. We had information that was coming out in our statement that we gave later on that evening that the news report didn't report on. That didn't have that information. So we gave them updated information. Could there have been a better communication? Some would argue yes, because the fact that we did not. There were several people that weren't even in the building. They were on vacation at the time. So there's that as well. And so internally, yeah, we'd probably take a look at that and see if we can do some better communication. We were completely caught flat-footed on this one. I think that there were some people that were maintaining that we knew days in advance. No, we did not know days in advance. There was a communication that took place between KDEM, Kansas Department of Emergency Management, and the county that was then filtered down to our emergency operations person. Our emergency operations person is not an employee of the city. That individual actually works for the fire district. And so that information was not passed on to the city staff at that time. Again, that's another area that we're gonna be working on. I think Jim has got some updates on that one. You had asked, you had said, is there anything else you want to add, Jim?
I think that the communication from the fire department was as soon as they received it.
Okay.
I don't remember the date, but
The 3rd, I think is what we.
it was not, Treg is our emergency management contact, and
Yes.
he notified the city as soon as he found out.
So somewhere in there, they got lost in the shuffle between that staff and leadership. That's where the communication broke down. So yes, we understand there were some communication lapses here. We're working on getting those basically corrected.
Well, I appreciate your response, and as I said, I'm trying to deliver it as respectfully as possible.
Well, I wasn't thinking there was any disrespect intended, but I also think that from the standpoint of a few hours, try to get the correct set of information out was actually a prudent move. Just saying, okay, there's a non-congregate site, we don't know how many people are there, what the mix is going to be, where they're from, and to be honest with you, we shouldn't probably be reporting some of that information anyway because of HIPAA restrictions. So, we have to make sure that we are going with the right information and the kind of information that we can report on. We can't go off half-cocked. I was not going to give partial information. That creates all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I'm not alluding to going off half-cocked, Mayor. We all can do that on our own. I guess my point is that you learned about it at 11 o'clock and you didn't get anything out for 12 hours. I understand Sheriff Hayden's position. I understand Commissioner Brown's decision. I understand Chief Kirk's decision. I appreciate him communicating as well as Sheriff Hayden, but it just flabbergasted me and the dozen or so citizens that reached out to me that there was no response from the mayor. I can appreciate and understand the validity of a group response, considering we're a region and we're all in this together, but I just would have expected something out of you sooner than 12 hours after learning from it, not going off, with half the information. So if we could just look at that in the future, again, we're all human.
Noted.
I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else from anybody else? All right. I don't have anything this evening. I think that we've got most everything addressed. Thanks for the thorough work on the part of staff. I know that we're still in flux, and I'm hoping for the day when we can finally have more folks in the City Hall to provide services. But we're moving forward, and we've got more business going on right now than we've ever had. I know our planning representative here can vouch for us on that one. So, all that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion Baldwin, second Winters, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? We are adjourned.